While most police officers carry out their duties with honor and integrity, few have abused their power, betrayed the public trust and committed heinous crimes, from brutal murders to organized crime. These 10 officers crossed the line and faced the consequences of their actions. Join us as we explore their stories, the evidence against them and the sentences they received for their crimes. Number 1. Wayne Jenkins. Wayne Jenkins was a former police officer and gun trace task force leader in Baltimore, Maryland. Force was a specialized unit of the Baltimore Police Department that was responsible for investigating violent crimes and illegal firearms trafficking. Jenkins had served as a police officer for over a decade before his career ended, when he was implicated in a wide-ranging corruption scandal. The investigation into Jenkins and the gun trace task force began in 2015 when the FBI received a tip that unit members were committing robberies while on duty. The FBI launched an investigation and discovered that Jenkins and his team indulged in various illegal activities, including extortion, theft, drug dealing and planting evidence foreign. Jenkins was the task force leader and used his position to orchestrate many of the illegal activities. He and his team routinely robbed drug dealers and others they believed had cash and drugs, would steal money and drugs and then sell them on the street for profit. They also planted evidence on suspects to bolster their cases and obtain convictions. Jenkins and his team were eventually caught when they robbed a man who was an FBI informant. It led to a lengthy investigation that revealed the full extent of their criminal activities. In 2017, Jenkins and 6 other officers were indicted on federal racketeering charges. The case against Jenkins and the Gun Trace Task Force were one of the most extensive corruption investigations in the history of Baltimore Police Department. The investigation exposed significant flaws within the department's internal accountability systems, including a lack of oversight and a culture of impunity. In 2018, Jenkins pleaded guilty to several charges, including racketeering, robbery, and filing false reports. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Jenkins' sentencing was a significant moment in the investigation, as he was considered the ringleader of the criminal enterprise. Jenkins' sentence reminded other police officers and public officials that law enforcement would not tolerate corruption in law enforcement. It was also a reminder that the actions of a few bad actors could have profoundly impacted the community's trust in the police overall. Wayne Jenkins's case is a cautionary tale of the importance of integrity in law enforcement and the devastating impact of corruption on public trust and safety. While the vast majority of police officers are honest and dedicated public servants, it's essential to hold those who engage in corrupt activities are accountable for their actions. Against Jenkins and the Gun Trace Task Force underscores the importance of robust oversight and accountability mechanisms to prevent corruption and ensure that police officers uphold their duty to serve and protect their communities. Are Number 2. Michael Dotro. Michael Dotro was a police officer in the township of Edison, New Jersey who committed multiple crimes, including arson, conspiracy to commit official misconduct and stalking. In 2013, Dotro set fire to the home of a superior officer with whom he had a disagreement with. The officer's family, including 2 children, were inside the home at the time, but fortunately no one was injured. Dotro also attempted to burn down the home of another police officer, perceived as a rival. In addition to arson, Dotro was charged with conspiracy to commit official misconduct for using police resources to access information about individuals involved in a lawsuit against him. Dotro's legal troubles continued when he stalked his former girlfriend and made false police reports about her. He used his position as a police officer to harass and intimidate her and even installed a tracking device on her car. He was charged with stalking, falsifying a police report and computer theft. In 2017, Dotro pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit official misconduct and 1 count of arson in exchange for his plea. Prosecutors dropped the remaining charges against him. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison and is not eligible for parole until he serves at least 17 years. Thank you. Diplomatic Protection Command. At the time of his arrest, it's the same unit where David Carrick worked, who was also a former police officer with the Metropolitan Police. Both men abused their power and position as police officers to commit heinous crimes against vulnerable women. He was convicted of kidnapping and sexual assault and murder of Sarah Everett in March of 2021. Everett was walking home from a friend's house in South London when cousins abducted her and Everett was found in a wood area in Kent. The case sparked widespread outrage and protests over the issue of violence against women. In the UK, cousins who had served in the Metropolitan Police since 2018 arrested shortly after Everett's disappearance during his trial, which took place in September and October of 2021. He pleaded guilty to all three charges against him. The court heard how he had used his police training and equipment, including handcuffs and a police ID, to kidnap Everett and then sexually assault and take her life. In December of 2021, Cousins was sentenced to a whole life term in prison, which means he will never ever be released. The judge described his crimes as a portrayal of trust that the public places police officers and said he had shown no remorse for his actions. The sentence was welcomed by Everett's family and campaigners against violence against women. Cousins also raised questions about the issue of violence against women in the UK and sparked a broader debate about the treatment of women by the police. The Met Police faced criticism over the handling of the case, particularly its use of heavy-handed tactics. Had a vigil forever, and its failure to investigate allegations of sexual misconduct by police officers appropriately. In response to the case, the UK government announced a series of measures aimed at tackling violence against women, including the creation of a new police watchdog to investigate complaints of police misconduct and the appointment of a new victims commissioner to support victims of crime. The case also led to the introduction of a new law, the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, which includes stricter sentences for crimes against women and girls and new measures to protect victims of domestic abuse. Number 10, Michael Volda. Michael Volvo was a former New York City police officer convicted of second-degree murder in the death of his 8-year-old son Thomas Volva and sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. The case began on January 17, 2020, when Michael Volva called 911 to report that his son Thomas had fallen in their home and was not breathing. Thomas was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. However, an autopsy revealed that Thomas had passed away hypothermia, and investigators ruled it as a homicide. Further investigation revealed that Thomas had been subjected to horrific abuse by Michael Volva and his fiancée, Angela Paulina, who was also charged with second-degree. Thomas and his older brother, Anthony, had been forced to sleep in an unheated garage as punishment for wetting the bed. Temperatures in the garage reportedly fell as low as 19 degrees Fahrenheit, -7 degrees Celsius, causing Thomas will suffer severe hypothermia. Prosecutors also presented evidence that Michael Valva had a history of using his children, including Thomas and Anthony. Valva's ex-wife, Justina Zabka Valva, had reported the Child Protective Services that Volvo was abusive toward their children and had a history of neglecting them. However, despite these reports, Volvo was able to retain custody of his children. During the trial, jurors heard audio recordings in which Michael and Paulina mocked and ridiculed Thomas as he took his last breaths. The recording also revealed Valva saying he didn't care whether Thomas lived or not. On March 25, 2021, Michael Volvo was convicted of second-degree murder and endangering the welfare of a child. The judge sentenced him to 40 years to life in prison. Angela Paulina was also convicted of second-degree murder and received the same sentence. The case sparked outrage and calls for reform in New York State's child welfare system. Critics accused Child Protective Services of failing to intervene despite multiple reports of abuse, and lawmakers proposed reforms to improve the system's response to reports of child abuse and neglecting. The issue of corrupt police officers is often complex and troubling. While most laws enforcement officers serve with integrity and honor, there have been instances of corruption and abuse of power, so it's crucial for communities to hold police officers accountable for their actions and for departments to have robust surveillance mechanisms. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.